Welcome everybody to the Brenton on Tour quarantine cast. I guess that's what we gotta call it, the quarantine cast, because we're all under quarantine. The COVID is amongst us, and people are having to stay inside and do their thing. I am joined in this episode by a very good friend of mine. You may just recognize his voice. I'm not sure, but please welcome as dramatically as possible. Mr. Mike Pongracz.
Nice.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
Hey,
He
buddy.
is the voice of the podcast. He is the real voice of the podcast. He's responsible for my intro and all the production and stuff that goes into it. When you hear it flow nicely, this is the guy that does it. I am outside in a beautiful 18-degree weather. You are inside in Ontario, and it is where?
It is the home of the great one, Wayne Gretzky. We are in Brantford, Ontario. Yeah, this is cool. I mean, we were talking a little bit before we started this. That I've only ever been on 2 podcasts. This is number 2. I hosted a podcast a bunch of years ago with a bunch of voice actor friends of mine. But aside from this, the only other podcast I've ever done is our buddy Adams when they did the Pod of Awesomeness. So,
which was some funny shit. Let me tell you,
that was some funny stuff.
You know, and I podcasting has been so new for me, but it's been a real fun journey. Don't mind the cars in the background. This sure mic is picking it up, but it's been a real fun journey. Obviously, going and with your help, designing it from the coffee cast into music, into travel, and then obviously it'll go to life. But right now, no one's really feeling like traveling. I'm sure. Well, sure, everyone wants to travel, but no one's really thinking about travel hacks. No one's really thinking about great life stories per se. Everyone's just trying to get through this, including us content people that are trying to put out content. My co-host Mercedes is up in Whistler. They're completely shut down right now, so she is getting ready to launch her podcast soon. So we've put the travel cast sort of, it's kind of coming and going. It's not like going to be as weekly as we're doing, because I feel like I need to just kind of come in with some stuff and come out and come in with some new stuff. And as you know, you're the expert. There's no real rules, but we're just going to kind of keep going with it, you know?
And I mean, this is kind of cool too, because I mean, sometimes the best sort of podcast, I don't know, topics or shows are ones that are so off the cuff and just chatting. And it's cool because, again, we have worked back and forth on your podcast since the Coffee Cast. And by the way, you're doing a fantastic. This is where I blow smoke up the host's butt, but it's completely warranted. You've done an amazing job, and it's very cool that you have you've created this little realm, the Brenton on Tour realm, and you're a great little interview.
It's been fun to put together, and it's just been fun.
And you've been able to talk to some really cool people, and now you've got a really cool co-host too. So today as well, here we are. But Mercedes is an old friend of mine, and we've got a great rapport, and she's my wife and I and the kids will stay up at her place when she's out of town training sometimes in Whistler, and we'll go up, and she's been awesome for just giving that. And I thought, who better to have on a travel cast than someone that travels more, like as much as me, if not more, when we're allowed to travel. And she's really, she's a riot. So far she's been, most people are messaging me saying, keep her. And you leave, and I'm like, all right, whatever. But, that's always the way it goes, you
it's
you always get shuttled to the side.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, this is very cool, and it's weird. It's sort of it's a weird thing for me, because usually I'm used to driving shows as opposed to just kind of being like, all right.
I figured we were due to chat, and there's been a lot going on.
Yes.
There's been a lot going on just in the world, but I just went through something. You secretly just went through something rad, and and was part of this whole thing since January that shocked the world with our friend Adam, who had emotionally shocked the world with a return to the WWE, which was great. And you're, the whole time putting the podcast together, you and I are texting back and forth, old school wrestling fans like, oh, what'd you think of this? And what'd you think of that? And you're like, yeah. And then like, there's no way Adam's ever going to make it. And it was great. I was one of the things, we'll get into that. One of the things he touched on when he was talking about it was the element of surprise. And I was so happy I didn't know. So it was just fun that you got to be a part of that. And I'm sure
that was probably the hardest thing, because I knew, I knew when he got cleared not too long after he found out. And if if anybody's watching that has the WWE Network or doesn't know what we're talking about, there's a documentary that they put out on our buddy Adam Edge, WWE guy. And in the documentary, it talks about how he went to Pittsburgh to see the doctor and got the all clear. So back in September, like early September last year, I was on my way to a conference in Toronto, and Adam called me, and he's like, "Hey, buddy." And I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" And it was kind of a little out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
It was like, I think it was a Saturday. It was a Saturday morning. It might've been a Saturday morning. And, and he's like, "Hey, so I got some news." And as I'm getting the news, I'm driving down into a parking garage, and I'm like, hold that news. I'm gonna lose you. I'm gonna lose you. I'm gonna lose you. And as soon as, and he's like, okay. So I'm like trying to call him back, and like I'm not getting through because he's got this call answer service, and then I finally get through, and that's when he told me, he's like, "Buddy, you're not gonna believe this, but I'm cleared." And I'm like, what? So I've known since September, and it was one of those. It was like, the circle of surprise, and it was
amazing. It was
we're talking about it, and it's like,
I loved not knowing. And again, people just joining this. I mean, you don't have to be a wrestling fan to appreciate this story. You have to just be a fan of somebody with a dream and a goal that had it taken away from them, and then they had to fight and claw back to get it with support of all the amazing people around them. Yeah. That's a life cast story, by the way.
Oh yeah.
That was already told, and so I guess I've lost that. But anyway, it was just a funny thing that, like, you don't need to be a wrestling fan. So, to people listening, backing it up a little bit, which we'll get into Mike and I's history, but one of the things that Adam touched on was being away from the ring for 9 years.
Yeah.
And having that ability to surprise somebody for once, because you can't really surprise anybody anymore with anything. So the great thing about it is that whereas I was like, all right, great, Mike, you knew since September, and you kept it totally under wraps, which is your job to do. And I love the fact that you didn't let the cat out of the bag. And I love the fact that Adam didn't let the cat out of the bag, because whereas you knew in September that he was coming back, and the rest of the world had heard rumblings that he was coming back, you didn't get to experience me sitting on the couch at 21 going, wow.
Yeah.
Because it was super emotional, like, as a human being. This had nothing to do with wrestling and the emotion of this. I was watching him come out and then walk to the ring, basically emotionally walking to the ring. Yeah. But you could tell by his face. My son's face was like, what? And like, I was like, oh my God, look at this. Like, I just couldn't believe that he was able to pull it off. And then hearing all the backstory, it was just really great. And so, whereas you had this amazing, you're in from September on, and you're there for the whole journey, which was been, which is awesome. But on the flip side, I'm also like so happy that by the time I got to 21, I was like,
still a surprise.
What's going on? So it was really cool.
Well, and that was, I mean, it was cool to find out, and then to sort of see and hear the steps leading up to Royal Rumble, and then to be there in Houston for when he came out. And again, we knew he was coming out. They were filming some stuff. They wanted to get some reactions.
I saw you react on there,
which is hilarious, because my wife Carolyn, she was watching the documentary with me last night after Mania Day 2, and she goes, "What's that you call people that are like super fans that are really nerdy into wrestling?" I'm going, "Mark." She goes, "Yeah, who's that Mark?" And I'm like, but still, it was a really cool, exciting, because it's anticipation. You knew it's coming, and then the music hits, and I still say he has the best music since Hulk Hogan's real American. It's the best entrance music.
I think you're right.
And Alter Bridge probably loves him for that, because I think
it was funny because I'd sent him a message before all this madness went out, before all the COVID and stuff. I was like, man, it's gonna be hopefully, wouldn't it be great to see Alter Bridge play out? And he sends me a text back going, "Do you really think you'd be ahead of me on this?" And I'm like, no, I just think it would be great. and I had just seen Alter Bridge like a couple of weeks ago in Birmingham, so it was awesome and they're playing Metalingus. And for those of you who don't know, Alter Bridge is a rock band that provides Adam's Edge's music, and it really is an amazing entrance. It really is an amazing entrance.
It suits him to a T. And if you ever get him on the podcast, get him to tell you the story about how Mark Tremonti basically introduced the song to him in sort of like rough demo form originally. It's a really cool story. And I think because I think Adam mentioned that it's probably their most popular single, and it was never released. So
no, and they have to play it all the time. It's really, really funny. And then it's odd to hear them play. I got to tell you, it's actually odd to kind of hear them play it live. It's sort of like any band that has like a song on a soundtrack, maybe, or they have a song like, even like I heard like Motorhead was playing Triple H's music live, and I'm like, it just feels weird. It's like, I know it feel like it should be like, I know they wrote it and it's theirs and it's on their like first record or second record, but on the flip side, it's like, man, it's Adam's now. So it was just funny to see.
I feel bad for Miles Kennedy having to sing that, because it is not an easy song to sing, and that dude can shred like nobody vocally.
Well, I'm sure they were looking forward to WrestleMania. Maybe it'll happen at SummerSlam. But
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But or next year in LA, which is only an hour and a half, 2 hours south of me. So
you're a little closer.
Fingers crossed. Maybe we'll go. For those of you that want to know about Mike, so Mike and I met in 2011, and this is an interesting thing how this came about. So tying it back to Edge for a minute, and actually we're going to tie it back to Pearl Jam, but I was on tour with Pearl Jam, and I was doing some shows across Canada, and we had done Toronto. We were doing Toronto and Hamilton, and the first Pearl Jam show in Toronto was the night after Adam's Edge Appreciation Night on SmackDown. And unbeknownst to me, I mean, it was like that's when I think they were taping it. Yeah, they were taping it and then playing it. They were going live. I can't, but whatever it was weird. I never saw it, but so I remember talking to drummer Brent Fitz, and Brent was Brent plays with Slash, and Brent and I had a speaker series at the time called All Access, where we were sending drummers out to talk about their life, almost like a live podcast. They would go out. Brent went out. We had Jeremy from Our Lady Peace, and all these people would go out. Michael Shreve from Santana, and talk about basically in podcast form what their career arc was. And I had said to him at the time, we should try to get Jericho, because Brent and Jericho were really close.
Right.
And I think Brent had reached out to him and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And it was something along the lines of he couldn't, it was just jammed up or something like that. And I was like, okay. And no sooner did Brent and I get off the phone, literally get off the phone about Jericho probably not being an option, I walk out and I see you and Adam sitting in the second row or something. And I was like, what is going on? Like, just the fact that he had just retired and everything. And I'm like,
but that wasn't me. No, I wasn't. That was his cousin Matt, I think.
Oh, then it was Hamilton. Well, we met in Hamilton then, but it was Hamilton.
We met in Hamilton.
Gotcha.
Toronto was first, and
then Hamilton.
And then Hamilton.
Okay. So that was like a weird, because then you guys came upstairs and everything. So so it was funny. So I was just thinking about how ironic that was, and just and I said, well, I'd met Adam, and I was like, I think I said, this is a funny story. I was just talking to this guy about Jericho, blah, blah, blah. And I said, it's just weird that you're here. And then he started filling me in on why he was there. He's like, I was here from last night, and Pearl Jam's one of my favorite bands.
Yeah. Then that's an understatement, but okay.
Right. But so then it was just like, well, I said, we'll be in Hamilton. And then somehow, then he's like, okay, cool, I'll come. And then you guys came, and it was great. And so that's how it kind of came together for Mike and I. And Mike and I just stayed in touch over the years. Just stayed in touch over the years, and it was really, really cool to kind of like realize that, you know, outside of the history that you have with Adam, just your story about voiceover and the things that you do. So give a once over here of what you guys, notes? The Coles notes of you guys coming through college, but not so much on the Adam side, but just what you have done personally out of the voiceover work.
Well, I mean, that's where we met. I mean, both of us went to Humber College for radio broadcasting, and we kind of gravitated because of our sort of nerdy love for wrestling. And I had no idea at that time. So I think it was the first day I learned that Adam was he was an indie wrestler, and that's when he was working with Sully's Gym with Ron Hutchison and Sweet Daddy Siki. And so all of a sudden I'm like, we're gonna be friends, because like wrestling nerds all migrate to each other.
They really do.
Really do. And so whereas Adam always had a really great voice, and I always figured Adam was going to be, he was, you know, but he loved wrestling, so he went
KRP, you know.
He just, I've still got, it's funny because I still have old cassette tapes from when we were in college, when we used to have to do shows and stuff like that, and one of his names that he used back then was Adam Jericho, which it's hilarious. So but he went and did his wrestling, and he actually, I think his first match with the WWE was at Cops Coliseum during, I think it was just after we graduated or just before we graduated in 96, and I think that was his tryout match, or one of his tryout matches against Bob Holly at Cops. So he did wrestling. I stayed with radio, and I worked, you know, up north, Elliott Lake was where I started, and I worked in Woodstock, Ontario, at a great little station for a couple months. Then I wound up in Hamilton, went out to Kitchener and helped start up a great radio station out there with a bunch of really amazing talent who are now, you know, really big. Roz and Mocha of Roz and Mocha fame. He started with us out at the Beat. I mean, he'd started elsewhere before, but that was where he really got his stuff. So I was a radio guy. I worked in production. I never had like the really great Rodney radio voice, because when I started in the 90s, everybody had, like, the joke was, you know, the guys that had the big voices carried their balls in a bag beside them. And mine were up in my throat, it sounded like. So I was a production guy. That's why I can do all the audio stuff, you know, things like for podcasts and that, like that was my first gig. But I learned pretty quickly on that, you know, a lot of the jocks when I started all had the same read, and then salespeople would come to me and be like, yeah, you know, I want to do this. I want to do something different because, you know, and so I was the guy who just started doing, you know, I would be the character voice guy, or I would be like not the jock voice. And so doing that all those years, I ended up just doing a whole whack ton of commercials over the years. And then I met a guy at the station in Kitchener, a guy by the name of Jason Laborde, who I owe a great amount to, because he introduced me to my first agent. And he actually introduced me to the whole world of voiceover. And that was back in 2004, I think I got my first agent. And the first gig I ever did was for Muchmusic, back in the days when they still played videos. Right. Actually, I don't know how many videos they played at that point, but they did a lot of original programming, you know, much Love and Hate 2005. And, you know,
and how competitive was voiceover work at that point?
At that point, I joke at the fact, because now, you know, anybody that's got, you know, $200, a USB microphone, and
any asshole sitting on a porch in Cloverdale,
can get into voiceover now. I mean, there are places online where you can sign up and, you know, be part of a pool of, you know, thousands of people. Back then, I say it was almost like a speakeasy. Like, you had to know somebody who knew somebody who robbed somebody who knew the knock to get in. And that's kind of where it was originally. But still, there was like a really small pool of talent that always seemed to do the same stuff. One of those guys who, you know, at first I used to like shake my fist. One of the guys I worked with, he was also a voice actor, worked in radio with me. And we used to like, and his name was Jamie Watson. And Jamie Watson is the voice of comedy channel CTV, or it used to be the Comedy Network, but now it's CTV Comedy. He's the voice of that. You'll recognize him. I met him at a party once, and he turned out to be like the most nicest, amazing, super creative guys, and really was one of those first sort of like, hey man, if you have a demo, like I can shop it around for you. Like I've got an I'll play it. And he was really, really cool. So back then, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of people, but it was,
sure.
As years have gone on, the cost to getting into it is way cheaper. I mean, back in the days, you used to go to a studio all the time. Now I work from a home studio.
You built one at home. I mean,
yeah, man.
I see it now. Like as I'm fishing around YouTube and looking for, I'm trying to just do the. I bought the mic. I got the Zoom H6. I'm trying to make it sound as good as possible, but I still send it to you. The Zoom is kind of cool because I can come out of it. I think it's at 44 kilohertz right now. It's 44 coming into the computer, but I mean, I think it sounds relatively good. When I do it at 96, it sounds pretty good. And
96 is overkill for the average person. Now we're getting really super nerdy.
Yeah, without people we're entertaining ourselves now. But
yeah, for the average person, 44 is good. But that's what it is now. Like the entry, like the cost, like the price point entry to get into stuff like this now is fairly inexpensive if you just want to start. I mean, years ago, another guy, a lot of my sort of, hands helping up over the years were guys that I started with in radio.
Yeah.
And it was another producer of my buddy of mine, Carson Manette, who he said, Mikey, he says, when you start making money in this, like invest in your gear, invest in your space, because that's the stuff that as you sort of progress your career, it's going to come back and pay back in spades. And it has. So over the years, I've gone from working in a closet, then building a bigger space, and then, moving to the place we're at now and transforming a bigger space that,
it's funny because you used to post these videos of like being on vacation and having to scramble to a closet
to
do something. Yeah. And I remember when I did the first podcast, I did it on my phone. Right. Yeah. And I was like, let's see if we can rescue it. It was just on SoundCloud. It was on the HD recorder. The HD recorder in this is pretty great, but I was like, you can tell it was a phone. Then I bought a little preamp but then I remember I was like in a scenario where I had to jump into a podcast pretty quick. And I was like, a mic would just go into a closet. I needed a quiet space. So I did something on my phone in a closet as an interview. And I was like, okay, I understand why Mike had to jump all of a sudden into something and get something close to
for what I mean, for people that don't really know like what I do. I mean, I don't have a set number of hours. I mean, there's a couple of clients that I work for that I have set times every week that will either go down to Toronto to Corus Key, like the big headquarters of Corus, or I'll just record stuff from home. But it's never like a set time. So when I want to go on vacation, I don't get paid if I don't work. So
sure.
I would take my travel gear. I would take travel gear. So we would go to Florida, and that's when I'd be doing videos where I'm sitting in the back of my rental car as like Carolyn and the kids are in Disney. I will leave Disney, go out to the parking lot, and huddle up in the backseat of my car with a microphone and headphones. And I've got, like back then it was an old flip phone that I was talking to the client, and I would record in the back of my car because the acoustics of a car are actually not bad. Like
I've done one in a car. I think I did one with Dean Blundell as his guest. And I was, and I was in my car, and then I did it into the Zoom and then sent him the file. And anyways, it's funny because it's just interesting how I'm learning to go through this thing. When I'm traveling and I'm on tour, I've always got my stuff set up all the time.
Yeah. And that's
because you could get a text from anybody that's like, hey, if you got 20 minutes, I can jump on with you. And I don't really ask a lot of people. I kind of try to plan them out a little bit, but every now and again, something like today pops up where we're like, hey, let's jump on and do something.
Yeah, man.
And then all of a sudden it's like, I need an hour. It's like, or I need 45 minutes to get set up. And it's like, well, I've lost a window. So I always have to be ready. So
you bring the travel gear. Although over the years, I've lightened up a bit, and I've worked with some really like amazing, clients that get it. Like they know that, hey man, take some time, go on a vacation.
Sure. And that's the way it should be.
But I still get the itch, and I like to bring my gear with me because you never know, like recording in a closet, not a problem.
Is there a mystery to what you do? Is it one of those things where you, like when we talk like this and I go, all right, Mike, let's let people know who you are. And you go, no, I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
You don't know where. my voice is, and that's the gag, you know.
Today's podcast is sponsored by Founders Reserve, Glenn Livet.
So taking questions from the audience.
This is good. This is good for the. It's good for the vocal cords.
That's right.
You know what? It's the neat thing is.
I'll tell you what. Let's do it like this, Mike. Let's do it like this. Whatever you're willing to let out of the bag.
Okay.
Whatever you're willing to let out of the bag for our listeners. Voice number 1.
Okay. If you feel the need to text during a movie, don't do it. That bright light and clicking is annoying to everyone around you. Don't be a Tommy Texter.
Tommy Texter. There we go. There's voice number Tommy 1, Texter. Everybody. Yeah. I'm going to get you to put some kind of thing in there after we do this. You can do some kind of
post-production applause. Yes.
So everyone listening, that is Mike's voice number 1. Yes, I am sure I've heard you on a couple of other ones the other day. I was listening going, wait a minute. So let's get voice number 2. I want you to keep like the other 100 under the wraps, but let's give our listeners 3 that they might recognize.
All right. I can, let's see what's recent one is like, if I do it, I'll scream into it. But if you've ever wanted to buy furniture from one of Canada's oldest and finest furniture establishments.
I knew it.
Yes. It's the Scratch and Save event at Leon's.
I knew it. Yes. I haven't even asked you about that one, but I knew it. When I heard it, I was like, there's Michael.
Yes, Leon's.
There he is.
Years and years and years ago, nowadays when people ask me like, oh, you're a voice guy, what do you do? I will use the Cineplex Tommy Texter. Like that's become kind of like the most recognizable one. But before that, this is going back to probably around the time that we met. I had been brought on to revise or revive the East Side Mario's. Hey, bada boom, bada bing.
I knew that was you, but they were still playing that out here.
Yes. So that was.
It's no longer here because the West hates the East. So anything East Coast has been kicked out. We don't even have a Swiss Chalet anymore.
I haven't been East Side Marys in a number of years, but that for a while, and that was a cool one too. So, but beyond that, like if you've got kids that watch anything like Treehouse or Disney, you'll hear me every once in a while doing, closed captioning is brought to you in part by, or
totally. Well, that's it. Now that you guys have heard the voice on the other end here, that are listening in your cars and planes, well, not on a plane or a train.
This is the face that goes with that voice. Right. And now you know why I do what I do, and I'm not on.
That's right. So now listen for Mike's voice, even though this podcast is world renowned, and you've probably heard his voice all over the world now. This is
you're listening to the Brenton on Tour Coffee Cast.
Not really. This is the quarantine cast. What are we going to call this? Because I got to start putting out these other kind of casts.
You're listening to the Brenton on Tour Quarantine Cast.
There we go. Get the fuck in your house and stay in there.
But it's very cool because again, whereas we're talking earlier about Adam, like Adam is recognizable. Just you look at that's him. I'm the guy that. It's like, oh yeah, you're that guy. And
but you don't go like if you don't go up, it's. You can hide it. Like if you walked everywhere and were like using the Leon's voice, if you were using the Leon's voice everywhere, people would be like, "Hey, wait a minute, I know you."
Yeah. Well, I used to when back in college days, we'd go visit my buddy out at Queens in Kingston. And one night I remember we went out to the bar and they had me pretend to be this guy, Steve, who was just a foreign exchange student from Britain. So I would like throw on a British accent and just like try to pick up girls, right? Like as the British, it was fun, but nobody ever bought into it. But yeah,
it's like fun to mess around with.
Voices. Hey man,
if you can make a career doing funny voices, like or any kind of voice or anything. I mean, that's because the funny thing is like the people working really hard in the world hate this shit, but they also want to know everybody that's doing this kind of cool stuff. You know what I mean?
This is where I'm I always I don't necessarily make fun of the people, but you go online, you see everybody like #blessed, #grateful. I truly am like, dude, to be able to do what I do, like I love my gig. It's never really the same thing, and it's something that I feel like over the years I got good at. And I'm working for myself. I'm on my own business. I got to, promote my brand, not my brand. That sounds like hokey. I try to be a decent dude to work with. And because I spent a whole bunch of years on the other side of the glass when I was working in radio as a producer, I know what it's like for the guys that have to edit, the guys that have to deal with the salespeople. So my mantra has always been, hey man, I want to make this as easy as possible for you. And so I've got, some of my TV producer clients, like they're friends of mine, because they're not just people that I work for or they have to work. Like, I'm like, dude, I've been in that side. And, they're like, man, you got that back really quick. And I'm like, dude, I know that you want to go home and you're probably dealing with a bunch of, a-hole, salespeople. Not that all sales reps are a-holes. I'm just saying Friday at 4:30, I've got a client that needs to be on Monday. I know that feeling. So my deal is, yeah, man, like I want to be as accessible as possible. I want to make it as easy as possible. And, that's why I've built this, this studio, which has come really, it sounds kind of bad, but it's come in handy during this whole quarantine time because studios have had to shut down. Voice actors can't go to studios to record. So some business still has to be done.
Well, and I was going to ask you, I was quarantined up and isolated for 14 days out of society after I returned from overseas and obviously tested positive and went through the whole thing. And
which was a scary time when you told me about that. It
was a weird, but you know what? I heard from lots of people, including our boy down in the States there, and he checked in to see how I was doing, man. And that was really nice of him. And a couple of other professional wrestler friends checked in to say hello, which is the weirdest thing in the world for me to have these people in my life as you would,
cool, man.
But it was it was awesome. And for people I haven't heard from in a long time, just checking in people. It was great. Heard from a great deal of people. So anyone listening that checked in, and just thank you. Thanks for that. It was really great. And my question, Mike, is now that this world is quarantined and all the rest of it, so all these businesses are shutting down. People are going on unemployment. Things are happening. Yes or no? Whether we like them or not, you got to stay away. That you can't work. There's essential services. Blah blah blah. So now what's going on for you? Because now we're in a scenario where, without getting too personal, but how is Mike making money through this process, and what are you passing on to people for advice on how to get through that? So.
Well, I mean, I think I want to say I'm in a bit of a different position, only because, yes, I'm a freelancer by all means, like an independent contractor, and I rely on, getting gigs, and most of the stuff that I specialize in is promo. So the stuff that you hear, Hope Wildlife, blah 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 on Smithsonian channel. Like I do a lot of that stuff, and TV has become everybody's best friend over the last couple of weeks because that's all there is. So that stuff still happens. It's on the commercial side for me where clients that have stuff that they want to promote and sell, now isn't exactly the best time maybe. And there's certain aspects of what I do that have kind of slowed, but at the same time, I've always been, I've always looked at my career as make sure you're diverse enough to have your hands in a couple of different avenues just in case, something dries up. So I do, promo and that's usually a monthly thing. And that's kind of steady income, sort of, but it can end anytime when the next, Mr. Big Voice comes along. So for me personally, I've actually seen a little bit of a slowdown, but it seems pretty, business as usual. But that's also in part because I've, again, made my studio here. I've got the ability to connect anywhere in real time with quality. And that's like, for example, today I did, I won't name the client, but I did some work with Sportsnet, and we did a commercial session for something coming up. And we were supposed to record at a studio in Toronto, and it's not happening. So we had the client, we had the Sportsnet people. I was here, I'm recording. I'm putting together the audio and I'm sending it to my buddy Mike, who's editing and producing the actual visuals. So I'm in a pretty good spot because I've been doing this for a while, so I'm kind of used to this thing. I know a lot of people in my profession specifically that don't have this capability or don't have the same kind of setup.
And I would imagine the agents and stuff that are like, no one's really, are they still working? Are people still going, like, you know, if someone were to say, okay, I've got no income coming in, GM closed, I'm sitting around doing nothing, but I know everything there is to know about car parts. So I'm going to start a podcast on car parts, or I want to be voiceover for a car part company. And I've gone and I've bought all this stuff on Amazon, and now it's at my house. And now I'm going to call an agent, and an agent's going to go get me car part work. Or the agent's going, hey, we're dried up. So whatever clients you have, you got. Good luck.
This is a question that can go a billion ways. If you're talking specifically, and I've seen a lot of people, especially like a couple of years ago, when radio started to really shrink, when the bigger companies were laying off a lot of people, the first notion for most radio people, and I being one of them, was, well, what am I going to do? I have no real transferable skills other than back selling songs. Well, I'll do voiceover because I've been doing it forever. The truth of the matter, when I got into it, and I was told pretty quickly, is that they don't like radio people because they sound like they come from the radio. They don't sound natural. So that was the radio people. But the average Joe that's just, there's a lot of people that have discovered that, wow, I can actually, pay to read audiobooks because they're huge now. And I can read commercials, or I can read things they're called explainer videos, which are basically those YouTube videos that, describe a product.
It's funny, Mike, just on a side note before I forget. So a lot, as fun as the podcast was, the joke was that you can use it to go to sleep or wake up with it. And so out of the copy casting, people were like, you really should do some comm work. You really should find some audio work to put people to sleep because you're killing me. And I was great.
I tell you, I've had a friend of mine is an author. He's a really great author. And he approached me and he said, hey, I'm thinking about having my book made into an audiobook. And he goes, would you want to do it? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm like, to me, audiobook, there are some amazing audiobook authors. And I've listened to some great audiobooks, a lot of like the real high end famous ones that are done by the actual, if it's, Tina Fey does hers, she's great. But there are a lot of audiobook authors that you wouldn't know their names if you saw them, but they're fantastic. I think it's a real, I don't want to say it's an art form. You have to have a certain skill set and a certain passion for it, which I don't have. I've been raised over my years in radio and now doing voiceover that if it's, longer than 60 seconds, you've lost me. Like
Gotcha.
I'm like, oh, bright, shiny object.
It cost me a lot to get you on this podcast. So thank you for the longer than 60 seconds. I mean, it's expensive, folks.
Hey, but I don't get me wrong. I like to talk, but for me, it's short form. I do training videos like e-learning and stuff, and I've done those over the years. And it's funny because I had a friend of mine whose daughter worked at I think it was an A&W, and they had to do a training video, like a training thing, and it was me doing like the training. So that's the kind of long form stuff that it's not exactly the most fun, but it can pay fairly well. Right now, medical, like, wow.
Of course.
If you can read really big medical names and keep it somewhat interesting and not, go to sleepish, there's a huge market there for quality, narrators that can do that. And so, I mean, when it comes to voiceover, there are areas that people are still going to be able to do decent money. When you talk to me about everybody else that's sort of caught in the quarantine and not able to work, like, I mean, that's where, again, I've got some friends that can't work because of this.
Sure.
I'm looking at one here who, your livelihood is
well, but we don't know what's going to happen with it. I'm standing by. We've been told that our business is recession proof because entertainment's the first thing that people spend money on when things happen. So it was the first
when it bounces back. Right.
So for now, I'm just kind of doing my thing and waiting, and thankfully our government's taking care of us a little bit. So no one's going to start. Well, we're not going to starve, at least.
But I think the key here, and maybe it's the whole glass half full versus glass half empty, is I really do. I'm very grateful that we're in the country we're in. I know there's still a lot of people on both sides that, feel the need to hammer, and it's not as unified as it may have been years ago, or maybe we're just sort of realizing now. But I feel pretty optimistic that, if we as a collective Canadian unit can smarten up and hammer down the spread of this and take the pressure off of the people that are stuck on the front lines doing like amazing work, the doctors, nurses, everybody in the healthcare industry, if we can, prevent it from getting really, really crazy, and we can sort of, I said it was kind of like, when your mom or dad used to say, okay, you can go outside after you clean your room. Yeah. And you drag it on and you don't clean your room for like hours and hours. And it's like, well, I don't want to, but the sooner you clean your room, the sooner you can go outside.
Exactly.
So the sooner we all kind of collectively realize, okay, let's try and minimize this so that we can get back to doing what we do. I have absolutely all the confidence in the world that it is going to bounce back a lot quicker up here than it may elsewhere. Not pointing to anybody.
Now, what do you think? Question. So, WrestleMania weekend just happened.
Yes.
Obviously, our business. So then, obviously, they pre-taped a lot of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What were your thoughts on them actually going through with it? Now, I'm hearing there's some people going, listen, hey, like there's some wrestler comments that are like, listen, people look to us to provide entertainment, which I agree with. Like, they powered ahead after September 11th and all the rest of it. So there's that. But then it was this unique kind of thing where it was an empty arena, and they still kind of did it. And whether you're a wrestling fan or not, picture the NHL having games only on TV with no fans. Picture the football, which is actually a better game on TV anyways, fans or no fans. But I'd actually love to see an NFL game with nobody in the stands. It would be very interesting. The trash talk alone would be worth the price.
Oh,
you
I know.
Could sell that shit. But I just thought to myself, could they not have waited? It's not like they were losing tens of millions of dollars in revenue anyway from the gate.
Right.
And I understand that we as sitting around need to be entertained, and it was certainly a different thing. But the question I have to you, should it have been called WrestleMania, or should it have been like the WWE special or something?
No, I may be in the minority here, but I absolutely think that it should have went on. I think it should still have been called WrestleMania because it is WrestleMania. I mean, it is what it is. And WrestleMania, now we're getting to super, I'm huge wrestling nerd, so we're getting to super wrestling.
Both.
Nerd.
I mean, likewise.
We both are. Yeah.
Likewise. I don't think I have any of the figures
not trying to
left.
tune out people. Not trying. I don't think.
But this is a general discussion on any kind of gathering, whether you're a UFC fan, a concert fan. Bands are doing shows from home. Bands are doing shows from whatever.
Yeah.
We'll get to Pearl Jam in a minute because that's how we met. But things are happening uniquely. It is definitely an interesting time in the world. Movies are being released. This particular scenario, I know did you like this presentation by them? Or should it have been different?
Here's my thing. I look at it from a creative person standpoint in that, okay, so you're given, here's the parameters. You're not going to have an audience. We're going to do this show. You are going to go out there and you're going to perform. I look at that as okay, this is an amazing challenge that I'm going to come up with something or a way to present this that is going to be just as enthralling to the person watching it at home as if they were watching a film, or as if they're watching, some other pre-recorded material. What can I do as a performer to invest them in what I'm doing, and to get them to not recognize or realize the fact that there's nobody else in the arena. And there were a couple of things on the show that I thought were bang on, that absolutely did just that. And the people that were involved in that are the people that, that they've got that creative mindset that said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to do it. This is how we're going to present it so that it is something that people will remember. I think, people will remember WrestleMania 36 regardless of COVID. It's going to be remembered as the most unique WrestleMania, polarizing. Some people hated it, some people liked it.
And all the funny thing is, Mike, and I think about wrestling from when I think I missed WrestleMania 1. That's the only one.
Okay.
Then I met Dave Walker, and he introduced me to what wrestling was. So from WrestleMania 2 on, yeah. I knew, I still couldn't see it, but I could get the magazine, could read about it, and we had the Saturday Superstars and Challenge and all the stuff that we could catch up on. Now,
right.
It basically blew up after WrestleMania 2. So I can look up to about WrestleMania 12 or maybe 11 and kind of remember where everything was. It gets foggy for me for a couple of years, then 17 in Houston, 18 in Toronto. Then it gets foggy again. I can see Adam jumping through and know that a table and being like, okay, that was Seattle, I think. And then there's little moments that you can kind of pick. Yeah. So this will be one of those things that lives on as that was
this will
summer,
be a moment.
That was the spring, that the WrestleMania moment is WrestleMania. It has nothing to do with, to me, they focus so much on WrestleMania moment. Who's going to have the WrestleMania moment? The WrestleMania moment was the broadcast.
Absolutely. It totally was.
And it was the broadcast. And to me, so that's the moment. And that to me was very interesting to watch. It was really weird at first. I was watching it going, I mean, you've been to these indie shows when there's no one there. So the message I got before WrestleMania started, the message I got from a certain retired wrestler was now you're going to see who the actual workers are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that was interesting that I was paying attention to that as it was going through. And as it started flowing, then I started losing that whole thing of there's no fans there. It started turning into a certain thing. One of the things I thought would have been fun actually is if, I knew that they couldn't have a lot of people. I thought it would have been awesome to find a way to pull 100 fans in there somehow.
Yeah. Well, there was a rumor online that up until just sort of the last minute, there was talk that they were going to possibly let fans in, a handful of fans.
It would have been All-Star Wrestling.
Yeah.
It would have been everything you've ever seen. But, there was the little things of the wrestlers talking to each other, which was really funny. And some of the things that they were saying. So it was certainly unique. So I don't know what my opinion is either way about it. There was parts of it that I liked, parts of it that I didn't. To me, I'm going to say this. Dare I say, it shouldn't have been called WrestleMania.
Okay.
To me, I thought it should have been this would normally be WrestleMania weekend. We're calling it this instead, and it's being pushed to SummerSlam's now WrestleMania, or it's a SummerMania, or I don't know what my thought was, but my thought was initially maybe it shouldn't be called WrestleMania.
I get that. And, my takeaway from the weekend of, the 2 days that they put on the show is I felt bad for some of the performers that were sort of achieving big things in their career. And I'm looking at guys like Drew McIntyre, who won, he beat Brock Lesnar. And it's a big moment for him. And to not have 70,000 people at Raymond James Stadium cheering that were expecting this. As a performer and as somebody who's, it's a moment. You know, you talk to Adam and he'll tell you, you know, when he won his first title, when you hear when it happens and the crowd and these people that have followed you and you get that sort of like that sort of blanket of
it's an
emotion.
emotional journey. It's an emotional journey.
And some people were, I don't want to say robbed of it, but you know, because they'll get it again at some point. It may not, you know, if it's the first time, you know, but
I'm not opposed to it now. So this is why these people get paid money and I sit on my porch in Cloverdale. At first I was like, I'm not sure it should have been called this. After watching it, I'm like, okay, it's that WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Right? Just like, you know, they were doing
that WrestleMania.
It's that WrestleMania. So for me, it's like, okay, fair enough. And kudos to everyone involved. So I was entertained. The kids were watching and going, this is so weird, but they were entertained. And so job well done by that team to pull that off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second question.
Okay.
To get off wrestling in a second and we'll move to music.
Second question.
All right.
Oh,
this is going to split the audience of two here that are actually wrestling fans on this podcast.
Okay. I know where you're going with this, but go ahead. It's going to pain me.
Should they break for 6 weeks?
Oh,
come back. Should they break for 6 weeks? Should they be like, thank you, here's Raw, here's SmackDown, see ya after Labor Day, and plank it and just say that's it, the first break in WWE history, which is also a story.
Yeah.
And then come back swinging the way a season would come back swinging, where you're like, this has ended here. And now we are going to break and we are going to relaunch in September when we can put 10,000 people in a building. That was then. They go then, now, and forever. That was then.
Then, now, forever, and now the new. Normal.
Now the new. So do you think they should break and say, we'll see you when we see you?
I am going to say, I want to say yes, but I know the answer is no, and not for any personal, like I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, that's
I know they've pre-taped. We've heard about all that.
I mean, and I've, you know, that's the one thing I've always enjoyed with having sort of Adam as my kind of like my in there, is I've never wanted to know anything. And even when we were building up to Royal Rumble, you know, I was out there in January and he's like, I don't want to tell you anything. I'm like, I don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's like, you know, so I don't want to know, but my heart says that the show must go on. The show will go on. And I think at this point now to stop it, it would make all the stuff that's been done sort of in these empty house shows, these empty events. I think it would make it almost mean less.
It's an interesting point that you're making, because I agree with two sides of it. I agree that keep the show going and keep it entertaining, and it's really going to push people to get creative. Because I loved, and I'll bias aside, I loved how Adam and Randy designed out the match and did the whole thing. But I also loved, you know, there was the Taker thing, which was
that was
thing.
brilliant.
And so there's all these different ways that they're going to get creative. So maybe it becomes a different kind of thing, and it challenges people.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking.
But I also love the idea that because it's also news that for the first time in WWE history, we are taking a break, and we are going to come back swinging with this, and this, and it's sort of like
there is one man who will not let that happen.
Understood.
Vincent Kennedy McMahon will never let that happen, and he will. My God, I'll kick it and screaming, pal. You know,
funny. I just was wondering if that. I'm just speaking. I'm just throwing it out there. I love being entertained, but I'd also would be completely fine with them saying, all right, friends, thank you for this process. Thank you. We did this. We did that. That's your champion. That's your champion. That's your champion. That's your champion. You get to see them all in September. Yeah. And guess what? This and this. So anyways, fun stuff. Moving on.
Well, one last thing on that is I will say I wish that I know that the WWE has the contract with Fox that they just signed earlier in the year. Now would be a great time, and I said this to Adam as well. I'm like, I would love if they would take some of the real, because there are some amazing content creators that work with the WWE. Like the production team behind some of the original content stuff is amazing, and it's only on the network. And unless you get the network, you don't get to see this. And I think there's some stuff on there that they could easily run as content on network programming.
Well, they could rerun Adam's show, and that was hilarious. Hey, man, and they could do all sorts of stuff.
The Edge and Christian show that totally reeks of awesomeness. Yes.
Whatever gets you a check, buddy. Let's get that. Let's get those residuals going.
There's no more residuals. That's it's more just, it's all just.
All right, switching gears, my friend. So you got a tiny little graphic for us.
Dude, look at this.
When we first met.
So let's see. This is here where we go. Let me find it here. So here, look at that guy. Look at those four.
It was a plaid party.
It was a Pearl Jam show, right? So
so this is Hamilton. This is
Hamilton 2011, and it was
two nights or 3 nights.
One night.
This is two or 3 nights after Adam's appreciation night.
No, it was the night after.
Oh, so we did Pearl Jam and then SmackDown came in? No, I'm sure
SmackDown was pre-taped.
Right.
Then Pearl Jam happened, and then that Friday, the following Thursday or Friday was. I've
done so many shows. My brain's fried. So there we go. So anyways, so there we are. And
that was us. That was us there, and that was 2000. Look how young and fresh faced we all were there.
Hilarious. And so that was in Hamilton. That was in Hamilton, and that was fun because we all connected. And then
so now let's see what I have. This one has a real great story behind it.
This is in London, Ontario.
This is in London, and Adam,
my cousin Daryl in the background.
Right there on the right side. Yeah. So again, plaid party, you and I made sure I wear plaid.
I just didn't change.
Yeah, well, hey, that's if you're comfortable in it, that's fine. But poor Beth was like very, very pregnant at that time with their first daughter, Lyric, and they made the trip up. And look at Mr. Shorthair Adam there.
Yeah, it was 48 degrees out. It was so hot.
It was super, super hot. Great show. But I think my favorite pickup. Well, hang on, we'll bring this one up here too, which is the Three Amigos in the show. Brent doing his.
There's the radio.
The master of.
So I just realized that we're going to also turn this into audio. So the first picture was it was Adam and Mike and myself and Carolyn backstage at the show, and the second picture was at a bar in London. That was attached to Budweiser Gardens, and Beth Phoenix was there, and Beth Copeland, and everyone's there hanging out. Basically the same kind of picture, but a hello.
Oh yeah,
and then the third picture is the third picture was Mike and I and Adam. They're sitting in their seats, and I was working. And now we have a picture of me
is us
and Mike with the children.
This with my kids, and I think this was the morning of or the day before you were loading in, and I remember getting lost, and you caught me on the street. I got pulled over by a cop.
That's right.
Because I made an illegal turn, and you were walking over, and the cop was just about to give me a ticket. And, I'm like, dude, I'm not from here. I'm sorry. And you're laughing. Mm-hmm. And the cop is like looking at you, and you've got your radio on, and you got your Pearl Jam lanyard. And he's like, all right, you shouldn't do this. But that was cool because,
it had fear in their eye.
Oh yeah, and you took the kids in to show them sort of like the
and then I came over a couple years ago when I was at Riot Fest in Chicago, and I had to kill some time, and then I came over and we hung out with the kids, and that was cool. So, anyways, Mike and I go back a long time.
Yeah, and
we're working together. We're working together finally, which is great. And it all came together through Pearl Jam, who coincidentally dropped a brand new record.
Oh my God, we haven't talked about that yet.
So that's what we're going to get into now.
All right.
So the new Pearl Jam record, Pearl Jam is the band that brought us together. So I love them. My top band likely in the world, I would say, of all time. It's very close for me. There's no better live band as far as I'm concerned. And
I married into not
yeah,
only a Disney family, but my wife is the Pearl Jam aficionado. Like, she is the
right.
diehard since
And
they started.
and she, she's actively will message me about it, which is great. Like, just be like, oh, this or that. And you guys all went down to a festival a couple years ago, I think in Atlanta or something. And
Yep.
so anyway, so we all met at Pearl Jam in Toronto. Coincidentally,
Yep.
This was an interesting thing because this was my return to Toronto, the first show I had done in Toronto in an arena in that capacity since, I'd left in 2005. So it was 2011. And it was on the last record, the Backspacer, yeah, and it was on that tour, and that was a huge moment those 2 days for me because I had come back. It was the biggest shows for me, like in Toronto, I had ever done. I had 2 sold out shows at Pearl Jam. It was amazing, and I did, for the record, for everyone listening, I don't pay for these shows. I was running the shows on behalf of the promoter, so it's not like the biggest shows I've done from a financial standpoint. I was just running the shows, and
masterfully running.
Neil Young was there, and Woody Harrelson was there, and it was like the PJ20 release weekend. It was the Toronto Film Festival, so it was a huge weekend and a huge moment for me career wise, and then out of that came a great relationship with Adam, and then a great relationship with you guys that we've shared for many years now, and
like weird sort of like things where you grew up in Port Perry and my parents had a cottage in Cadmus,
totally,
which is so there's like
right around the corner from one of my best friends growing up, and
and I grew up in Stouffville, so like
it's just a funny how the small
so
world
intertwined, right? But
so we bonded over Pearl Jam, and I've done I'm at 17. I'm stuck at 17 shows. They were doing some more coming up, and I was touring, and I wasn't going to be able to do them, and I'm trying to get to that magical number of 20 Pearl Jam shows and in my career, which is great. So I'm trying to get there, but they were coming in, and obviously this is postponed everything, but they put a brand new record out, which everyone's been waiting for. Okay, so we kind of were texting back and forth on the record. I sent you a review on track by track breakdown that I thought was great, that I saw in Variety.
It was really well done.
I talked to Adam about that. Adam was like, yeah, I love these. It reminds us of, I loved it because it reminded me of growing up in the 80s and 90s and getting like Metal Edge and reading about the new Metallica record, the new Skid Row record, the new, all these kind of cool things. And they broke it down like that. So now that because the first single came out and you were like, huh.
Well, yeah. Well,
and I remember you being like, huh. And I was like, give it time.
I know.
I'm sure it's the sum of the greater parts.
I still have the texts that Adam and I were going back and forth on. Like, did you hear Dance of the Clairvoyants? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, did Eddie Vedder swallow David Byrne or something? Like,
hilarious, right? But now that you listen to it, it fits
in the context of the whole album. I think it's fantastic. I had the distinct pleasure of getting an advanced copy of it like 2 days before it hit Spotify, courtesy of a friend that I won't mention his name.
And you didn't get it from this podcast. That's
you
all
think
I'm
you know
say.
Me. You think you know me.
But it's awesome. Yeah.
And it was and then Adam and I had been texting back whenever singles were released on Spotify, and be like, "Oh, have you heard Super Blood Wolf Moon?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, like that's now I'm feeling better about the album. Now I'm feeling better. Like, I can't wait to hear the rest." And then I'm like, then when it came out, Adam's like, "Okay, what's your favorite?" And I'm like, "You know what, man? I'm really starting to like Clairvoyance. It's pretty good, but my favorite is Comes Then Goes." And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, this album, the whole album it's almost like they did an homage to every band that they grew up listening to and mashed it all into one, but made it sound like.
And here's the thing about Pearl Jam, and I don't know how much, like, we're also huge Foo Fighter fans and all the rest of it. And like, not every band gets an opportunity to write everything. So you get, I'm pretty confident in anyone listening that has a, dispute on this or has better information than I do, but I'm 100% confident that Dave Grohl has a relatively active role in the songwriting process in the Foo Fighters. Likely better than 50%. Yes?
I would think so.
Right.
I would think so.
In this particular case, when you read the reviews on how the record came together, Eddie's massively involved in it, but every single member of that band has contributed, and they always contribute. And then it's breaking down to, well, this is a McCready song, and it's
a Matt Cameron
this
song.
is a Matt song. And so I think people need to understand that, like, when you're listening to a sum of all parts, it's like, and when you break down how the record was made, I mean, it took a long time because they were demos of demos, and they tried this and they tried that, like any other record does, and they got all these cool sounds. And
when you read that interview that was in Variety, I mean, you see how far back some of those demos actually went.
I mean, almost back to the last shows that I did with them.
Yeah, like we're talking, I think 2017 in that ballpark were
some
of the early songs. And yeah, and I think it's really neat to hear. The thing that, you know, kind of blew me away at first when I heard Clairvoyance was I read that was a Matt Cameron song, and I'm like, Matt Cameron using a drum machine? Like, what? Huh?
Well, you sit around your house and you create, right? And it's a really interesting take because it's a total a lot of people that were messaging me going, I don't know what to think. And I'm like, you got to put it in your headphones. And I think the lost art of the headphone, the real headphone, is lost. And sonically, they were going to put this record out in movie theaters and let you experience this new sound, which is just the way that they had recorded it. And I thought if you listen to it in headphones, it sounds completely different than listening to it any other way. And I think people that are on the fence on the record, they need to dive into it. They need to put that, they need to read this amazing Variety article where they talk to this producer about it, and he breaks it down amazingly. And I think you need to, like, really go track by track like we used to do. Right? What's this new song? And the bands will go, this is this guy's song. And this is like, you know, this is Sebastian Bach's never sounded better than this. And you're like, oh, okay. Then you go you listen for that. And you're like, oh, I guess so. Or this or that, or the new Springsteen record is this. And we brought this guy in for that. And I used to love it. And bands, I don't find do it anymore.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you talk about headphones, like whenever I hear or envision that, I think you've seen the movie Dazed and Confused, right?
Yeah.
Right at the end, Wiley Wiggins' character, I forget his name, the little kid that he comes back after the night of partying, and he gets into his bed and he throws on the big old 70s cans, and he's listening to, I think it's Slow Ride by Foghat. And I'm like, that's how, you know, you want to experience that kind of music. And I see it in my son now. Like, he listens to a wide range of stuff. I mean, he was a rocker kid at first. He did his grunge phase. He went through his Led Zeppelin and all that. And now, you know, he went to Tyler, the Creator, and he's a big, you know, listening on headphones. I mean, he's in his little AirPods and stuff, but I think for the kids now, that's their headphones. But you experience an album like that, and it takes me back to when we were, you know, the album and cassette era, because we're not that old. We were cassette era. We were, you know, Walkman. But
and I just thought the record needed some wings, and people need to let it fly a little bit. And I think now that they do it, for me, Quick Escape is one of my favorites, because I can picture it live, and I know what that's going to be like live. Whoever said it's the first song on the record, and they jam out at the end for like 2 bars, and I know live that's going to go probably 12 or 16 bars, whatever. Matt's going to take it for a while, right? So there's some really great stuff, and you know, every song has got its own.
I like Buckle Up. Buckle Up is another one I'm a big fan of. But Comes Then Goes, I mean, right off the bat, because you know, recently, and when I was down in North Carolina in January, and Adam and I, we watched the Leaf game at night. We had a bottle of scotch, and then we were listening to Black Crows.
Yeah,
'cause that's on our list of shows we're supposed to go see this year.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard Comes Then Goes, you know, Adam's like, you got to listen to this one. So I'm listening, and I'm like. And that's just Eddie, and that's Eddie, you know, playing his little guitar riff.
And they talk about that. They talk about how they tried many different things on that song, and then just decided.
But it was just
it's just going to be this.
That's
so
it.
that's the beauty about music.
Of course, I had to grab my guitar and try and figure it. And I'm not a guitar player at all, but that's going to be this summer's, new cottage tune type thing. Although it's a 6.5 minute song. So that's a lot of lyrics.
You only need 4 bars, buddy. Call it a win.
I know. Hey, EAD, that's all I need, right? That's what Machete says, right? Just 3 chords.
That's what you need. So we came together on Pearl Jam. It brought together this great friendship.
Yeah, man. And
that's continued on, and
the creative juices that have come out of it now.
Right,
man.
We're having some fun with it, and
it totally is.
Kudos to you on the stuff that you've been up to. It was great to see you in that documentary. There's a WWE documentary on Adam's return that I don't care if you're a wrestling fan or not. Try to find it on, but hopefully it'll be on YouTube.
I think you can get
it'll be on YouTube soon or something.
Yeah, I'm sure it will be, or the network. The network, they always do like the free month trial, like you can sign.
But there's and there's people that are going to be like, I'm not getting that or whatever.
Yeah.
There's going to be, it's going to float out there. There's some great footage.
Sure.
Mike, you're in there talking about it. There's just there's some really cool stuff in there. It's a great comeback story. It showcases a great guy with amazing support system, and I don't think there's a person that can watch that, wrestling fan or not, and not be inspired by it. And I think it's great that you got to be a part of it and got
man, it was cool. I'm very thankful,
and I appreciate you keeping us all connected and having producing this for me, and we're having some fun with it.
This is great, man. I love it, and I it's cool to see how you've sort of crafted this show and how you've grown as a podcaster and your interview style, and I dig that. And it's so neat to see you go from like Brent, the guy that can put on like these crazy concerts, and and I'm just like, damn, like, we got to set it up for this many people. And then we came in and I'm like, man, you are doing, like, what you do is, like, to me, like, people will say, man, what you voicing all this stuff, like, that's so cool. I'm like, no, man, like, what you do and seeing you handle, like, all these people coming at you and, like, with, financial things and, like, setup things, like,
well, I never stopped chasing it, and this is why I love this documentary so much, because I'm going to lose the sunlight here for a minute, but I've never stopped chasing it. And it was always been there, and it's something that I've always gone after, and anyone listening will understand me. But I mean, if you got a dream, you got a goal, you got to go after it. It has nothing to do with traveling the world and doing things. It really has to do with going after what I set out to do, which was to make a career in music, but B, just learn and be productive and being able to contribute to our business. And that's how I do it. And I meet amazing people like you guys, which has forged this great friendship. And here we are.
Well, that's it, man. Like,
it's only dropped 1 degree since we've talked, so it's still 19.
It's still, old person 22 in this booth. So,
but I appreciate the time, brother. And
man,
all your work that you've done for this has been amazing, man. And I think it's awesome. We got to keep trying to do this again.
Man. And it's kind of neat. It's sort of back to that documentary. I had to laugh because some of the footage they used at the beginning was from old Dean Blundell there.
I saw that, and someone had sent that on Twitter, and I'm like, what? And so I sent a tweet out last night because after watching that, it reminded me, not that I ever need reminding, it just kind of triggered. I'm like, right, Edge Appreciation Night, and then we all met like within 2 days of that, and
he was on Blundell's show,
and I wish, and now I'm doing, now Blundell's hosting this podcast, and you're producing it, and I don't know, it's a funny world that it's all intertwining.
It's so intertwined, man. And you know what, like, you were talking about your gig, like my whole thing, and you've got kids, I've got kids, and you want to encourage whatever they want to do. Have goals, have dreams, make them realistic. You can have some crazy ones, but at the end of the day, do something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's
100% agree, brother.
That's it, man. That is totally it.
Well, thanks for joining me this edition of the Brenton on Tour. We're going to call it the Quarantine Cast. I get to leave I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you, Michael, because you've been very creative, and I've been writing the intros for the other things. But this is what I'm going to challenge you to come up with these with a new intro for this.
Oh, for the quarantine cast.
Yeah, whatever it's going to be, and you're going to voice it, and you're going to write it, and it's
crap.
going to be. Just make sure people understand that they got to stay the hell inside, or at least on a, in a park alone with their kids.
Man.
Whatever the hell you're going to do. Challenge.
I haven't
been
a copywriter in almost 20 years. So.
Well, I'm not a podcaster, so here we are.
Oh, very well played, sir.
All right, buddy. Enjoy your day. Where can people find you? Where can people find you online and all that fun stuff?
You know what? I'm not much of an onliner, but if you want to go and see what else this mysterious voice has been a part of, just hit my website, www.mp, as in Mike Pongracz, voiceovers, all one word, .com. And I got some stuff up there that I've done over the years that you'd be like, oh, hey, yeah, that's that dude. And it's like, man, it's a good thing he didn't get in front of a camera.
We all have a face for radio, my man.
That's it, buddy. That's it. Hey, all the best, buddy. Thanks so much for doing this, man.
Thanks,
cool.
buddy. And stay warm.
Yes, sir.
And isolated.
And stay isolated, yeah.